for herds that sign up this summer in year one, so 2025, they would genotype all their ungenotyped breeding stock. So that'd be all the cows, in-calf heifers, heifer calves, any stock bulls they have on the farm, anything that's ungenotyped, we would genotype them this year free of charge using button tags, so that'd be completely free. So we'd have all your existing herd genotyped in, and then from January 2026, farmers would genotype all their calves at birth.
I'm joined this week by ICBF business analysts Mark Waters and Gearoid Slattery to discuss the National Genotyping Programme, how it has performed to date, some of the benefits of genotyping, and the challenges that have been faced through the first phase of the programme. Both Gearoid and Mark outline the opportunity for new participants to join the next phase of the programme. We're also joined by Cork dairy farmer Sheena Murphy, who outlines her experience of being in the programme and how it has benefited her herd. I started by asking Mark to give an outline to the National Genotyping Programme.
So the National Genotyping Programme is aimed as being the first step towards genotyping the full national herd. It's an ambition that we have and is shared by the Department of Agriculture in their longer term strategy. So the national genotyping is supposed to get us on the road towards that 100%. It's a co-funded project between the farmer themselves, the industry, Meat Industry Ireland, Dairy Industry Ireland, and the Department of Agriculture.
And it has been around now for a couple of years, I'm right in saying that?
Yeah, so it was originally launched in 2023. We had our first intake of herds in 2023, and we've been through two full spring calving seasons, you could say now at this stage. So there's currently just about 15,000 herds signed up to the NGP. About 4,500 of those are dairy, and then in terms of the national cow herd, in the couple of years already, we have about 45% of the national cow herd genotyped. In terms of the dairy cow herd, there's about 39% of all dairy cows in Ireland now genotyped thanks to NGP. So it's grown massively.
And where is the ambition there, Mark? Where would industry like to see that grow to?
Yeah, as I said, the aim is that our entire national bovine herd is fully genotyped, and also then that all calves are genotyped at birth. So that we everything has full verified parentage and all of the other benefits that comes with that.
Gearoid, maybe to come to you, what is involved for herds that join the National Genotyping Programme?
Yeah, James. So for herds that sign up this summer, I suppose in year one, so 2025, they would genotype all their ungenotyped breeding stock. So that'd be all the cows, in-calf heifers, heifer calves, any stock bulls they have on the farm, anything that's ungenotyped, we would genotype them this year free of charge using button tags. So that'd be completely free. So we'd have all your existing herd genotyped in. And then from January 2026, farmers would genotype all their calves at birth. So that's the heifer calves, bull calves, beef calves, all get genotyped at birth using double tissue tags. The farmer registers his calf online, similar to how they always would, either on Ag Food or through a farm software package. Paper registrations aren't compatible with the programme, unfortunately. But they register their calf, send off the DNA, and then any sires, dams, or sex that is incorrectly recorded by the farmer, to be identified by the DNA sample, and the DNA will correct it on the passport or the blue card before it is issued. That, I suppose, is what's involved from a farmer's perspective.
And lads, who can actually join the programme?
Yeah, so it's aimed at breeding herds, James, but effectively we have no caps or limits in terms of herd size. So if you have one cow or 1,000 cows, you're welcome into the programme. In the initial programme, we had certain caps around, co-op participation and whatnot. But look, given the success of the first couple of years, we have the shackles off now. So there's no limits in terms of, we want everybody basically who's calving a cow, and the only other criteria really is what, as Gearoid alluded to, you do need to be able to do online registration. So they're the only two criteria really. But provided you tick those boxes, you're more than welcome. We want you in the program.
And I suppose what farmers really want to know is, if they haven't already joined, why should they, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, I suppose a couple of headline benefits. I suppose one of the biggest ones, look, is the heavily discounted genotyping. So as I said, like all your cows, heifers, stock bulls, they're all genotyped free of charge this year in 2025. So just to take an example, 100 cow herd to genotype 100 cows, like a normal genotype is €18 an animal. So like that's €1,800 worth of genotyping that a farmer will get free of charge this year to get his cows genotyped along with heifers, etc. So look, there's a big cost saving there. It's doesn't get any better than that, free of charge. And then on the calves as well, that from 2026, when you're genotyping your calves, that rather than paying €18 to genotype an animal, the farmer's only paying about €6. €4 that to ICBF for the genotyping cost, and €2 to cover postage and the cost of the additional double tissue tags. So look, that's a big benefit. The other, I suppose, main one that a lot of farmers go for is the parentage verification. So look, with dairy herds, spring calving, compact calving, you go out in the morning, there's 5 or 6 cows after calving, and look, the calves could easily get mixed up. I suppose from a farmer's perspective with this, they take their best guess as to who the sire and the dam is of the calf, and know that the DNA will fix it if they make any mistake. That'll pick it up, it'll fix it, and the blue card will come out correctly. So look, that's a big advantage. And I suppose the other thing is being able to take the samples at birth. That I suppose historically, if farmers wanted to genotype, they had to use hair samples on older animals and this kind of thing. While with this, they can use the double tissue tag. Each year gives them a sample, and they just send away the DNA sample. Um, I suppose the other thing I would say is just around the accuracy of evaluations. So look, farmers are obviously, breeding cows, rearing replacements. It's very expensive. It costs an awful lot. With the use of sex semen, look, sex semen is expensive. Trying to time AI around sex semen, there's a huge amount of work involved. So I suppose with the NGP and getting all the animals genotyped, you do have more accurate evaluations on your animals. You're talking 25 or 30% increase in reliability with having the genotype in there. So you have more accurate EBIs. You can more easily identify who are my best cows to breed from, to use sex semen, to do these kind of things, try and produce as good a replacement as possible for the herd.
Yeah, on that point, James, yeah, just to double down on that sex semen point, guys are picking out their top 20% of cows, but are they sure that that is their top 20% of cows? We often see when herds genotype their cows are re-ranked somewhat, but they mightn't be exactly the same bundle you'd pick for your sex semen, particularly on the EBI criteria, so if you're going to spend that much money, sex semen is not cheap, and there's you're putting a lot of effort into heat detection and possibly synchronization and different things like that. So it's a lot of money to spend, so you want to make sure you're getting it right.
And the big one there, you mentioned that's the big one for me, in terms of it's really improving the accuracy of individual animal data. And, we're down to that point now, as you said, Mark, in terms of selecting a smaller percentage of cows for breeding. So improving that individual animal data through the use of genomics is a massive one at farm level. Is there anything else, or what about CBV on calves? That's obviously coming through the system now. That's obviously an added benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So the CBV, or commercial beef value, for those who are not aware, is it's a value that indicates the beef merit of calves. So for potential buyers who are going to rear those calves and finish them, gives a better indication of their beef merit. So exactly the CBVs on calves, to get those to show on the mart when you're selling them, one of the criteria is that they're genotyped. So all the herds in the National Genotyping Programme now will have that extra information on the mark board, which will help make them that little bit more saleable, and also give the farmers who are putting that extra effort into picking better quality beef bulls for their herd, in terms of the beef sub-index. So I suppose the other point to make there is about the dairy beef welfare scheme, and that's where farmers get paid extra money for a certain number of calves for having a better standard of beef sire. But one of the criteria is that the bull must be genotyped and then meeting 3 stars on the dairy beef index and on the beef sub-index. So again, one of the knock-on benefits of being in the National Genotyping Programme is that you'll get if you have your stock bulls there, your Angus stock bulls, say, cleaning up, or beef stock bulls cleaning up, you'll get those genotyped for free as well. And then, if especially if multiple bulls are running at the same time, the right sire will be on each of those calves automatically without you having to put any extra effort in, and you'll get your dairy beef welfare money and then your CBVs on the calves when they're being sold. So, lots of kind of extra knock-on benefits that people mightn't think of. Another example, say, of a kind of a side benefit is a new service launched now by some of the milk recording services there called GenoCells. And that's a very novel service whereby you can take from a single bull tank sample using the DNA in the milk. We can actually tell which cows are contributing the largest proportion of the somatic cell count. So without having to individually test each cow's milk, you can actually tell which are the high cell count cows in that bull tank. But the cows do need to be genotyped first. So if you're part of this program, you'll be eligible to take advantage of that new service. Again, very, very novel new technology coming on stream there.
And I think it's probably worth noting as well, like genocells is something that a couple of years ago no one had heard of, and I suppose it's worth noting that because of NGP and getting these massive volumes of animals genotyped, it's really opening up opportunities with new technologies coming down the line. So like genocells has now arrived and farmers are able to use it as a commercial offering, and like going forward there'll be loads of other things that'll come online. One of them being genomic inbreeding. So with things like sire advice, that we'd be able to incorporate genomic inbreeding into it. So I suppose inbreeding is something we're conscious of around the dairy herd, and with AI sires, that genomic inbreeding is a tool that will be available thanks to herds doing massive levels of genotyping. Another one that's kind of come up a few times, and hopefully is something that, again, on the back of all this genotyping, we'd be able to do, is around lethal recessive genes, and maybe incorporating that into the breeding program and even into sire advice, that we'll be able to identify cows in farmers' herds that are potentially carrying a copy of a lethal recessive gene, and making sure that they're not being mated to a sire who is also a carrier, and increasing the chances of producing a calf who may have an issue or a stillbirth or something like this. So it's definitely worth noting that because of all the genotyping that's going on and the volumes of genotypes we're now getting into the database, that it's really opening opportunities with new technologies going forward as well.
Yeah, and just off the top of my head, James, A2 milk is another one potentially, that could open up for those herds who are interested in that,
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and they're all there and available, and hopefully the existing farmers are using them. But as you say, there's an opportunity now to increase that participation. You've 2 full calving seasons done, as you said. How was the program went so far?
Yeah, I suppose it's gone very well. I suppose just to put some numbers on it. I suppose this year so far we've about 745,000 calves genotyped through the program. So look, that would be, the bones of 40% of the calves that have been born in the country have gone through NGP and gone through the DNA calfage process. By the end of the year, we'd be expecting it'll be in the region of 45% of all calves that have been born will have gone through NGP and DNA calfage. I suppose like the volumes are huge. That like the peak of the spring there, kind of end of February, we 2 weeks there where each week the labs would have processed in the region of 100,000 samples each week through the lab. So I suppose the volumes are massive. And I suppose with the volume of herds, and I suppose with dairy herds and being anxious around turnaround times and things, that was a big area for us to focus on, to make sure, farmers who are looking for blue cards at 2 to 3 weeks of age, they can sell calves, are able to get them. So I suppose in terms of turnaround times, the average turnaround time in the lab from when the sample arrived in the lab to coming out the other side with the genotype was about 4 days, was the average. Look, at times it was as low as 3 days. And I suppose in terms of kind of birth to blue card, so from the calf being born on farm to a blue card being issued to the farmer, the average is around 12 to 14 days. I suppose one thing to note, look, is I suppose how often a farmer posts away their DNA samples does have an effect. If a calf is born on Monday and the poop sample doesn't get posted Thursday or Friday, then there's been a couple of days lost there, and the calf might be over 2 weeks then when the blue card comes back. I suppose one of the big benefits around the parentage errors and kind of farmers being able to take their best guess who is the sire and dam, and in terms of us tidying it up, I suppose in terms of the number of errors we were able to detect and fix on the sire side. So in terms of fixing sires, it was about 17% sire errors. So they put down sire A, turned out to be sire B, and we were able to correct that. That was 17 dam errors. So where they put down one dam, turned out to be another. That was kind of 5 or 6% of samples, and sex errors as well. Look, they're uncommon, but they do happen. Farmer, as I say, when they're very busy, lots of calves on the ground, it's easy to make a mistake as to who's a heifer, who's a bull. They were 1.5%, and also with wrong breeds. So where the wrong breed would have went out in the blue card, the DNA corrected it in 3.2% of cases. And I suppose when you consider that we're talking about these percentages across 745,000 samples, 17% sire errors, nearly 1 in 5 calves, like that adds up to an awful lot of calves. So I suppose, yeah, it went
to say growth like that, 1 in 5, as you say, it has to benefit from an accuracy in terms of genetic index point of view as well.
Definitely, like when you consider that, if a farmer wasn't genotyping at birth, they would have put down sire A, that then calf would have got a parental average EBI based on that sire. They maybe be retained in the herd based on being out of that sire, and all along they're not, and they're being bred based on that sire. That it has a huge knock-on impact on the whole breeding in the herd if we don't pick up on these errors.
Yeah, and James, just on that point, actually, one of the other benefits that we've seen of the program that I didn't mention before is that we are picking up bulls. We are capturing bulls now for the AI program that would have been missed otherwise. So based on the parental average, even aside from parentage errors, based on the parental average, maybe they weren't of interest. But once we genotype them, then the genomics shows that their genetic potential is higher than we initially thought, and then they become of interest, and there'll be they're a smaller proportion, but there is some of those bulls starting to come into like the Gene Ireland that wouldn't have been there otherwise. And then if you add in the 1 in 5, as we were mentioning, sire errors are almost 1 in 5. Like if their parental average was based on the wrong sire altogether, sure, of course they may not have been of interest, when they should have been because of the incorrect sire. So, it's probably incalculable, what bulls would have been missed because of the wrong sire, had they been registered wrong in the first instance. So
that's a good point, and it's really identifying those outliers, as you said, that may not have come into the system. Just Mark, to stay with you, the point on the turnaround times, you're quoting 12 to 14 days, but there has been obviously some talk from herds about delays. How consistent were those turnarounds, and what kind of challenges did you encounter? Obviously, an awful lot of genomic samples. It was brand new 2 years ago, the program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so look, as Gearoid alluded to, the biggest variable actually in terms of those turnaround times was between the calf being born and the lab. Across the program, the percentage of samples that were above that 4 days, the lab was very consistently hitting 4 days. The percentage of samples that were, say, above 5 or 6 days was very small. So the lab were very consistent. But look, like anything like the BVD program or any bit large scale lab testing type system, it's impossible to avoid some issues and delays. You're talking about huge quantities of samples in a very tight space of time, and you're dealing with farmers handling them, the post handling them, the lab handling them, then the information goes to the department. So it's a very complicated pipeline too, So look, it'd be remiss to say there was no issues. There was, of course. Look, a guy sending the wrong samples to the lab, say the BVD to the DNA lab, and then we couldn't test them, which set them back and had to resample. As I said, delays in the samples getting to the lab. you know, and that type of thing. But look, we have been always like examining, taking feedback on, examining all these processes and see, well, we can't get them to an absolute 0% in terms of delays or errors. We can keep cutting them down, and every 0.1% at this volume is still a very large number of calves that we're easing up, So things like things like the fact that last year, for example, when there was an error or, an unusable sample or a delay, we have systems now to release the blue card so that that particular calf, that one or two calves in the year are not causing the farmer, stress. He can sell them. We have 98% of the other calves done properly. So those type of release valves are there to allow, if there's any hint of a delay or an issue, the passport goes out first and foremost, and then we can circle back and genotype the animal again if we need to. Another one that came up a lot was split batches. Guy sends off 20 samples, and 15 of them have results one day, and then 3 another day, and maybe 2 more on a third day. Now, again, that is unavoidable because eventually, when they're being tested, they have to end up in a set number of batches. But do we put a lot of effort in with the lab to try and put process improvements towards the end of the spring there to try and minimize that, so look, we're always working on that stuff and trying to keep those down to a minimum. In terms of like empty samples and unusable samples, they're significantly down, and it's not quite half, but almost half, I would say, of what they were last year. Again, they're never going to be down. They're never going to be down to zero, but there's only 1.2, 1.3% of the samples that can't be used, either because they're empty or the DNA is of sufficient quality. So that's really like kind of industry leading in terms of how low that figure is. So look, it's something we're working on all the time, and we take the sample, the farmers' feedback on board and these things. And look, there will be other opportunities in the future, as well, the potential for further improvements. So, like, one thing that springs to mind is that they have digital passports in Northern Ireland and the UK, and if we were able to sometime in the future move to a similar system here, you will be taking another couple of days postage at least off the end of the system to get the physical passport out to the farmer and so on. So look, there's loads of opportunities, but we take the farmer feedback very seriously.
Just speaking of that, we're also joined today by dairy farmer Sheena Murphy from Ovens in County Cork to speak of her experience of participating in the original NGP programme. Sheena, I suppose, thanks for joining us, and maybe firstly tell us a little bit about your own farming system.
Yeah, perfect, no bother. So as you said, look, we're farming there in Mid Cork. My parents, Jerry and Bridget, we're spring calving herd. We're milking roughly around 70 cows. We're a pedigree herd, so we have pedigree Holsteins, a few pedigree jerseys inside there, and also for a bit of colour, a couple of pedigree shorthorns around the place. So we initially got involved in the genotyping programme, I think it was in 2022. So look, that's when we started our journey with it, I suppose.
Why did you look up at getting involved?
We would have done, I suppose, selective genotyping down to the years. Like, there would have been a few cows in the herd that we could have bought in, or we'd have a few ourselves, we'll say, that need to be genotyped. But I suppose it was just the overall benefits. Look, it was obviously to get it heavily discounted and all that to get the herd genotyped out, was a major reason to get involved. And I suppose, look, just the accuracy around it. I know, like, look, we are a pedigree herd, but at the end of the day, mistakes can happen, so, like, look, even for the parentage verification aspect of it alone, that was definitely a huge reason to go into it. Look, you know exactly what you have, which is hugely beneficial to anyone.
And Gearoid mentioned earlier, the first year of joining NGP, herds must genotype all of their, we'll say, ungenotyped animals, both cows and heifers. Did you find that much of an ordeal, we'll say, to genotype all the animals?
I suppose, look, when the tags came in the post and you opened the box and there was a huge bundle of button tags there, you're kind of looking at it and you're saying, what have I gotten myself into? But realistically, look, once you plan ahead a little bit, plan a few days in advance, make sure that you have enough help on the day. I suppose, look, we were lucky the day that we genotyped all the cows, the 3 of us were there. So look, we were able to have one person organising the button tags, another person tagging, and then someone else organising the samples into the bags. So look, I suppose having enough help there really did help. But look, it definitely, when the tags to the very first day, it was definitely daunting, seeing them all there and the job that was ahead. But look, it's once you have enough help there, we found that it wasn't. Look, you flew through it, to be fair.
That's probably the body of work then. Yeah, and they adjust and then maybe to the fine DNA in the calf reg system in the spring. Was it hard to adjust to that kind of new routine, an extra tissue sample tag? And
I suppose, look, you were taking the BVD sample anyway, so look, it was just another sample to be posted off as such. I suppose, look, maybe slightly at the beginning, it was probably just to get used to a new routine with it. It definitely, look, once you got through the first week or two, there was no fear with it. I suppose with registrations, we've always been registering through iGreenit, so we were always doing it online as such, so that wasn't a change for us. I suppose it was just getting used to, I suppose, like, look, obviously enough originally when you register a calf, would have had your blue card out within a few days. So I know with the whole process, the way it is now, it is slightly longer. But I suppose for us during the spring, in particular during the busy periods, like, look, we would be posting a minimum of 2 times a week. And look, it does take the pressure off. I know you still have to wait your few days, but look, as I said earlier, even down to just the I suppose the genomic results aside, even just down to getting everything, everything is correct when the blue card comes out. Look, there's no surprises afterwards, or you don't have to go away changing blue card details or anything. Everything is there as it should be, which is, look, that's a major benefit in itself.
From a breeding perspective, Sheena, obviously all animals having a genomic proof, and how are you benefiting from that or using that on your farm?
Exactly. So, like, I suppose when we genotyped out, like, look, I think everything obviously would have had their parental average, but look, it was when everything got their genomic results, changes were seen. And like a lot of, we'll say, our lower EBI animals would have come up significantly, which would have reflected, I suppose, more of what we would have thought. Maybe we had the rose tinted glasses on, yourself, but what we would have thought that they should have been reflective of their own production, I suppose. But look, it definitely, as the lads would have said earlier, like for your breeding decisions, for selecting animals to use the sex semen on, like, look, sex semen and that whole process isn't expensive. So look, at least when you have your genomic results there in front of you, you know what you have, and like, look, you can make the most informed and appropriate decisions for yourself and your own herd. That's what we found anyway.
And was there any other added benefits then, we'll say, to being part of the program?
Like, obviously your genomic results is a major one. The parentage verification is fantastic. Like, look, I know Gearoid went through the stats there on that, but like, at least for us anyway, I think that's a major thing. Like, you know what you have exactly. There's no mistakes there, and with everything genotyped out, it's for traceability and everything, you know what you have, and it's fantastic that way.
Thanks a million, Sheena. And I suppose, lads, before we finish up, the Moorepark Open Day is on Wednesday, the 2nd of July. I take it you'll be there to actually answer any questions or queries farmers will have, maybe existing farmers in the programme, and also mark farmers that might actually look to want to join the new phase of the programme.
Yeah, that's right, James. Yeah, we'll be out in force at Moorepark as usual. We should see plenty of ICBF representatives. We have a couple of people speaking at a couple of boards as farmers make their way around. But then also we have a tent at the end of the different villages and whatnot. We have a tent as well, and there'll be lots of ICBF staff there on the day to answer any questions that farmers may have about the program. Like you said, whether they're in the program and they want to clarify something or give us a bit of feedback, or they're thinking about joining, or even they already have decided they want to join and just want a bit of help and as to how to do that or what they need to do. So please come up and approach us. There's no wrong questions. We'd love to talk to as many farmers as we can on the day.
Thanks for your time today.
Thanks a million, James.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Sheena, Mark and Gearoid for joining me on this week's show. As was mentioned, the Moorepark Open Day is on Wednesday the 2nd of July. Gates will open at 8:30 a.m. and it'll run throughout the duration of the day until 5 p.m. The theme of this year's event is Innovating for the Future. There'll be a number of main boards at the start in terms of taking stock, where to from here, and looking at the changes over the past 10 years. A conversation around the business side of farming, financial competitiveness and cost control. An update on breeding and reproduction, looking at dairy EBI, beef on dairy, sex semen, where to next in that regard. And from a grassland management perspective, in terms of growing 15 tonnes, how can we do that? How can we do that with precision nitrogen management? And as you move through the day, there'll be a number of technology villages and finishing up with a forum at the end of the day. It's packed with information. We'd encourage dairy farmers and industry personnel to make an effort to get there next Wednesday, the 2nd of July, and come and have a chat with the Teagasc staff and what is happening in Teagasc, Moorepark and wider afield. For more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm James Dunne, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.